Hi, everyone. It is quite an honor to be able to speak to you all this morning. And I got to pick my own topic, which I love. And so, of course, I want to talk about legal issues in a hot market to try to help you. And if you're a manager, all your agents, stay out of trouble. My agenda is pretty straightforward. I'm going to talk about protecting your commission as a buyer's agent. I could talk all day about that, but I'll just, cut it short. Getting offers accepted, of course. Notice we didn't even have any pitches today. That's how strong the market is right now. The merits of a escalation clause, or maybe the lack of merit of an escalation clause, and an appraisal for less contingencies. And if you guys have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer whatever questions I can answer. So let's get started. I worked hard on this. So obviously the common theme in a hot market is focused on the buyer's agent, who, of course, we either do it ourselves or we know of people who have shown 50 different properties to one set of clients, written 5 offers, they've all gotten rejected. It's a very tiring process. And of course, you have to have a lot of tenacity to stay at it, which of course I strongly suggest that you stay at it. But when you're in that situation, you can be the boy, you can be a man, and you can be a woman. You really, really have to hold on to your buyer clients. Okay, so that's you, or that's reminiscent of what you're doing. Just remember what I'm saying, which is you've really got to hold on to your buyer's clients. So at first, what would happen is that the buyer would work with an agent, write a few offers, get very frustrated, get very discouraged. However frustrated and discouraged you might be, the client, the buyer, is usually 10 times more because they don't understand what's going on. And sooner or later, they start talking to their friends. That's always the bad thing. And the friends say, oh, I know. Why don't you just go directly to the listing agent and write an offer with the listing agent? And so that's what some of the buyers will end up doing. Of course, if that happens to you, you might still have a procuring cause claim and such, but why go down that road? It's better for you to stack the odds in your favor and protect your commission. So that was going on quite a bit when the market first started getting hot. And what's happening more and more recently is that we have a lot of office exclusives, like Bob was talking about, as well, pocket listings or whatever you want to talk about it. And if the buyer ends up buying one of those, you really, really want to protect your compensation. The term that comes up is, of course, procuring cause. And of course, in the background, I always joke that agents will say, oh, I'm the procuring cause, whenever they want the commission. But it's not that straightforward. It's actually a little bit more complicated. And procuring cause does mean different things in different contexts. But in our day-to-day practice, almost always, when you're saying I have a procuring cause claim, you're almost always talking about 2 different buyers' brokerages. Okay, can't be 2 agents within the same office, 2 buyers' brokerages from different offices that are both claiming that they procured the buyer for a property that's listed in the MLS. And you just, circle that MLS part for me in your mind, because if, let's say, there's a dispute between 2 listing agents, hey, that I'm supposed to be the one, no me.
Ronnie, I was referred to you by Leonard.
In a situation like that, that's usually just a contract claim. It's not a procuring cause claim. And of course, like I'm saying, if it isn't in the MLS, that might not be a procuring cause claim. It may be, because I'm not the one to make the decision as to who is a procuring cause or not. However, procuring cause is mostly dealing with the MLS. So be very careful about that. So when I say stacked odds in your favor and I say, you know, protect your compensation, it's really only one thing I'm talking about, and that is you've got to get a buyer broker agreement signed by your buyer. And I can hear your groans inside, you know, I can pretend, I can imagine your groans. You're like, oh, here we go again with the buyer broker agreement. Okay, well, what's your first objection? Your first objection is that I can't get the buyer to sign. Okay, well, look, I put all these little houses at the bottom of your screen to help you with that. Okay, the buyers aren't going to sign. You can say that if you can see my cursor right here before you see the first house with the buyer. I kind of understand. But how about after the second house? How about the third house? How about the sixth house? You've already spent 6 months with these buyers and you can't get them to sign. Come on. So as time goes on, you should feel that pressure stronger and stronger. Get that buyer broker agreement signed by your client so that you know where you stand and you know that your buyer is loyal to you. For those of you that are a little bit more of the old timers, let's just say that out loud. Oops. And I think I'm being recorded too. But we all know the old timers, they just, oh, Stella, shut up. You know, we don't get buyer broker agreements. It's just not something we do. And as the office, the managers and the trainers in our company, we kind of gave up on you, to be honest. And so we just moved on to our newer agents who have a blank slate. And we tell them, hey, go get your buyer broker agreement signed. And guess what? They get the buyer broker agreement signed. So warning, please get your buyer broker agreement signed. Okay, don't be the old timer. What is it? Old dog that can't be taught new tricks. Second objection, as I know you're going to say, the buyer's first words out of their mouth is, but we don't pay the commission. It's up to the seller to pay the commission. And what would you say in response? Well, wait a minute, buyer, looky here. And I don't know if looky here is the right way to say it, but anyway, looky here. Here we have in paragraph 3 on your screen, the compensation paragraph. And so let's say you put in 3% compensation. But when the buyer says, but I don't pay the commission, that's when you say, yes, but let's turn the page. And I'm sorry, that's on the top of the next page, but that's the way SBAOR drafted it. And it specifically says that any compensation that you, as the buyer's agent, receives from any other source from the buyer will go towards deducting whatever it is that the buyer owes you. And so if, for instance, you end up getting 2.5% in the MLS, then the buyer would owe you 3% minus 2.5%. And so it's still true that the seller is the one who's paying the commission. Of course, once you say it that way, what's the buyer going to say to you? Oh, well, if that's the case, then I only want it to be 2.5%. And you're like, okay, right? Let's sign it up. Get your buyer broker agreement signed. Or, as I say to my own agents, don't come crying to me when something bad happens to your compensation. So try your best, get this done. The longer you're spending time with that buyer, the less excuse that you have. Obviously, even if you don't, and by the way, because I'm talking about pocket listings and such, this is also another thing you can say to your buyer, is that this will protect you for compensation for properties that are not listed in the MLS and such. Obviously, this creates a buyer broker relationship between you and your buyer. So from a clear cooperation policy standpoint, this could also protect you and your company because you've established a buyer relationship for those pocket listings. So all in all, a very good thing to do. Still very rare within our day-to-day practice, but the young ones are all getting it signed, so that's your challenge for you as well. If you don't have the buyer broker agreement, I'm not saying that you're not the procuring cause. Okay, I didn't say it that way. It'll end up that if you feel that you have an entitlement to compensation, you'll go to the local board and you'll duke it out over there. But at the very least, if you're spending that much time helping buyers, please at least read the procuring cause guidelines. Most boards will use the procuring cause guidelines. As you see in the middle of the page, there's a factors chart of 25 different factors that the MLS panel may look at. It's their discretion to decide which brokerage is the procuring cause. So take a look at those factors and take a look at the practice tips so that you can protect your commission. You don't want to be working 6 months with one buyer only to lose the compensation or potentially lose the compensation, right? So get it signed. 7 out of the 25 factors on the procuring cause guidelines deals with buyer broker agreements, either for compensation, not for compensation, or agency disclosure statement. 7 out of 25. So get those buyer broker agreements signed. Of course, topic number 2 is getting those offers accepted. And the first thing, of course, is to remind you all, as difficult as things are for you, right? Many offers, you're not going to get any offer accepted unless you write the offer. So write offers, backup, contingent sales, expired listings, lease listings. Hey, I'm sorry, we don't want to rent it, your property, but we'd like to buy it. So try your very best to look for more homes for sales under rocks, under wherever, but you can't get your buyer's offer accepted unless, of course, you write an offer. And I know it's tough, but that's just my little reminder. And also another reminder, I don't think there's much of a magic bullet in writing offers, but if there is a magic bullet, it's price, obviously. I gotta get that price up as high as needed to get the offer accepted, or at least in the running for a counter. And then my little another challenge for you is fill out that form thoroughly and thoughtfully. So of course I can picture you frustrated, offer after offer, showing after showing, nothing. And so it takes a lot of discipline, but I challenge you to go through every single blank space, think about it, fill it in as thoroughly and thoughtfully as you possibly can. And don't tell me that you're already doing that, because we review all the contracts that the agents write, and they're all half blank and what have you. Okay, I'm not going to name any names, but obviously you should do your best to fill them out thoroughly and thoughtfully. I will talk to some of our listing agents, and they'll say, hey, we got 4 offers, and one of them, really does stand out. What do you think about it? How does it stand out? They're all just, boilerplate. It's the way that they fill it out. So fill it out thoroughly and thoughtfully. It's kind of a tongue twister so that you can hear me in the back of your mind. Okay, Stella, here I go, thoroughly and thoughtfully. Okay, so what am I talking about? Well, here, for one instance, and this may be a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, so you can see how kind of crazy I really am, but it's not the X boxes. It's above that. In the allocation of costs, we got a lot of buyer's agents. They just go down the line and they go seller pay, seller pay, seller pay, seller pay. Why are you doing that? Hello, it's a hot market. Don't do that. Try some buyer pay or 50-50. Or my little pet peeve is the one, oh, there's no homeowners association, but oh, seller pay. Well, why are you doing that? That's just kind of annoying, right? For the listing agent and the seller. So go through each box thoroughly and thoughtfully. And then here's my other example. What about this? On the home warranty, we all know, hey, it's a hot market. So we should be checking the box and the yellow arrow that says buyer waives the purchase of a home warranty plan. Well, my suggestion is let's think about it a little bit further. Maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe the best idea is up in the red marking where no, buyer to pay for a home warranty plan with the upgrades, with air conditioning, pools, by everything. And that for you, seller, is an extra layer of protection. So you'll know that if something goes wrong with the property, I got my home warranty plan. So just go through each one and try your best to fill in each blank as best as you possibly can. And then my favorite provision, of course, is the other terms. You can write things in there to help. Sometimes, of course, now we don't allow, well, I shouldn't have said, now I'm coughing because I'm like, oh shoot, I just messed up. Of course, we highly discourage as an industry those buyer love letters, but of course you could still write certain terms concerning not the client's, special characteristics, race, color, creed, sex, and none of that, but other things that makes your buyer ready, willing, and able to purchase the property. So one suggestion is, hey, my buyer does not intend to submit any requests for repairs. Or the other one that we're seeing pretty common, hey, seller, you can remain in possession free of charge for up to 30 days after close of escrow. For instance, oh, hey, by the way, my buyer has a $10 million trust fund, so, price isn't the object or something like that. I don't know how to write that out, but anyway, use the other terms to your benefit. But if agents can see out of 4 offers, this one offer stands out. The reason for that is because of the way that it's completed. So just rise to the challenge, I guess. Okay, moving on. I don't want to take up too much time. Is of course the escalation clause. I'm not sure if in your neck of the woods escalation clauses are popular or not. They do tend to be popular in certain pockets within California. Let's just go over first what the escalation clause is. Almost always, if well written, it has 3 parameters to it. First, it's an actual price, and then of course the escalation aspect of it. But if you just say purchase price to be 1 million or 5,000 more than the next highest offer, the next highest offer might be like, $3 million. And so number 2, you would like to have a maximum purchase price. I don't want to exceed 1.3 because you don't want, the sky's not the limit for our particular buyer. And of course, the third one is the documentation, which is the buyer almost always would like to see a copy of that other competing offer. The problem, however, is really that maximum price. And once, if you don't reveal it, that makes it a little bit more risky for your buyer. But then once you reveal it, you're basically showing your hand or your buyer's hand to the seller. And all good listing agents can't just be on the buyer's agent side. I have to switch over to listing agent, and all good sellers will basically delete the escalation clause in its entirety and just counteroffer for the maximum price. And that's the problem with the escalation clause. Of course, I got plenty of buyer's agents that dispute with me, or, discuss, I guess is the better word, with me, and they really believe that having the escalation clause is a great idea. Because it keeps them in the running and such, regardless of the maximum price, as long as your buyer is fully aware of the pitfalls of the escalation clause. Okay, try your best. And of course, but it does get complicated, right? Because there could be two different buyers or more that have escalation clauses. And then it gets very difficult for the listing agent to try to figure it out, which again, just cut it all out and just do a regular seller multiple counteroffer. For those buyers that are insisting on using the escalation clause, make sure you give them a copy of the CAR escalation clauses Q&A. Now, you cannot email this to your client because it's password protected for CAR members only. However, CAR will allow you to give it to a client on a case-by-case, person-by-person basis. And what you would have to do is you have to print it as a PDF or Word or what have you, and then you can email it to your client. And when you go through that process, please get an acknowledgement of receipt so that you say, okay, buyer, you're the one who wants to write the escalation clause. Here's a Q&A for more information. The legality of an escalation clause is not actually airtight. If you read the Q&A, it's kind of a little bit murky, probably okay, but the law is not crystal clear on that point. And the thing about the maximum price, revealing the maximum price, which most buyers do not want to do, that's all set out in the escalation clause Q&A. So that's good because you're not giving legal advice. All you're doing is giving the client the CAR Q&A. CAR has over 200 different Q&As for that purpose and that purpose alone. CAR understands that realtors don't really have time to read the Q&As, but they know that they, can easily download them and give them to the clients as a layer of protection as against liability. Okay, moving on to my appraisal for less contingency. Obviously, I have to start off with a little bit background, and we all know that everybody's writing a whole bunch of non-contingent offers. It's a very, very risky thing to do, and don't forget, it specifically says on the contract itself that if the buyer's removing their contingencies without understanding what it is that they're doing, they're acting as against the advice of the broker. So I'm hopeful that most of you are taking the lead from the client who's saying, I don't want to write any contingencies, rather than you being the one telling them you have to do it this way, because if it comes back to bite you, then that's very problematic. So when your client is writing a non-contingent offer, or actually basically for any offer, you really need to use this market condition advisory. The wording, the title of the form is a little bit deceptive. It does explain about market conditions in paragraph 1, as you see in the back of the screen. And it explains, hey, buyer, seller, prices go up, prices go down. And we don't know which way it's going to go, which, by the way, I do have some feeling, Randy will talk about this more, but I do have some sense that perhaps the market is maybe plateauing, or maybe it is a little bit too hot. The stock market is kind of feeling that it's a little bit too hot. So be careful, because when prices go down, that's when clients become very unhappy, right? Buyers become very unhappy and more likely to sue us. after close of escrow because, you know, the roof leaks and what have you. So be very careful and make sure that they sign the MCA before you write up the offer. I think in our company template, it's all preloaded, but I'm not sure if it is preloaded in the CAR one. So doesn't matter. You know, in the old days, we used to go to the board and get the forms, you know. So for me, it's like, oh, it's not auto bundled. So what? I don't care. Get it signed by the client prior to writing up the offer for the market condition. And it's a misnomer because the second part of it, paragraph B, is the part about, hey, buyer, when you're writing a non-contingent offer, it's very risky. You know, if there's no loan contingent, no appraisal contingency, and it goes through that whole explanation. And it's actually on the second page that explains, hey, and the broker is not recommending that you do this unless you fully understand what it is that you're doing, which is taking a very big risk during the transaction. Especially the inspection contingency, right? I mean, we have plenty of buyers that are foregoing inspections for the brand new property. Okay, but we have the older homes, the funkier homes. You know, can't just, you know, do the same thing for every single property for every single buyer. I would not forego that inspection contingency, or if you do, no problem, make sure you go over the market condition advisory with your client. So lastly, I just want to talk about my appraisal for less contingency. So for instance, let's say, do you guys laugh when I have these things like, oh, the listing price is $1 million, and you guys are saying, where do you find that, Stella? That's not in Santa Barbara. I'm like, okay, in my mind, there's a listing that is for $1 million, and yeah, okay, we're gonna have to offer 1.2 as the buyer's agent, or that's the buyer. And instead of just saying no to the appraisal contingency, maybe we can slip in a appraisal for less contingency. And so basically what the appraisal for less contingency is, okay, we don't need the appraisal to come in at 1.2. That's what we're offering as the purchase price. But come on, let us at least have an appraisal contingency for your listing price of 1 million. Even you, seller and listing agent, you believe that the property should appraise for at least $1 million because that's what you listed it for. So maybe they will agree to something like that. And the other reason, of course, that I'm giving this suggestion is also because of the way you draft it. For those of you who want to really draft well, you can contact the CAR legal hotline. They will sometimes help you with the language, but I tend to believe that's really the more experienced attorneys over at CAR. Many of the newer ones will just kind of dust it off, say, no, sorry, we're not going to help you with drafting the language, which is somewhat difficult. So what I would do, just as a few tips for drafting, is you should always refer back to the proper paragraph in the contract. You don't want to leave that to chance. And so in my other terms, I'm saying concerning paragraph 3I of the residential purchase agreement. And then look what I did. I basically just mimicked the language. So when in doubt, just copy, paraphrase or whatever, the language that is already there. So this agreement is not contingent upon the appraisal of the purchase price, but it's only contingent upon, and notice how the words are just matching exactly, except for I put described above or described therein. I'm sorry, I got some pictures covering my screen. Described at no less than 1 million, and maybe just insert not the 1.2 million purchase price, just to give the heads up to the seller. So that's a possibility. And if I want to give you guys one criticism for the language that you guys do draft, it tends to be too short. And I know you think that, hey, I got to keep it short or else I'm not going to get it accepted. But there's a lot of room for error when you leave it very short. I had one recently that said something like, not to do with the appraisal for less contingency, but we got a counter and it said, appraisal, number 4, appraisal shall be ordered by the buyer within 2 days. So the seller side is considering an appraisal. This has nothing to do with anybody in Santa Barbara, by the way. And then number 5, buyer to pay difference between appraisal and purchase price, if any. And that's my little joke is that then my agent will call me, hopefully before the buyer accepts. Sometimes they call after the buyer accepts, and they're like, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, why are you asking me? Well, I didn't write it. I don't know what they meant, but I really don't know what it means. Does that mean there's no appraisal contingency? Or does it mean that the appraisal comes in higher than the purchase price that the buyer has to pay for it? Those are things that, regardless of how desperate we are to get our offers accepted, you can't just let that go, right? You've got to let the buyers know, hopefully in writing, there's an ambiguity here. I don't know what that means. I checked with the CAR attorney or, Stella or whatever, and they don't know what it means. So it's up to you. I know you're very desperate. You figure it out if you want to go ahead and accept it or counter. Our suggestion, of course, is to counter that out because I don't know what it means. But there's a lot of language like that. And people just, hey, we'll just wing it later, which is fine as long as you have your documentation clearly telling your client that there's ambiguity here and it's up to the buyer to decide if they want to proceed or not proceed. I hope that was helpful. One last little screen about the appraisal for less contingency. I forgot to mention that if there's no appraisal contingency, don't forget, you cannot back out under the loan contingency because the appraisal comes in low. That's very clear now in the recent revisions of the CAR residential purchase agreement. And that's why if they really want an appraisal contingency, I would suggest this appraisal for less contingency to at least get some sort of protection given how hot our market is. Bob, I don't know if I have time for questions. If not,
yes, you do,
fine.
Stella. We have a few minutes, so if anybody has a question, please raise your hand.
How do you do that? I have a question. I'm sorry.
Randy Freed.
Yeah, Stella, I want to talk real quick about the escalate, and thank you. On the escalation clause, to me, there seems to be a confusion, and that is you're using the term highest competing offer. If I'm looking at and we're seeing escalation clause that could be $50,000, $100,000 over, but let's say $50,000. If my offer is highest or is already the highest to start with, and you put in let's say you take a property for $2 million, an offer comes in at $2 million, I submit an offer at $2,025,000, but I have an escalation clause of $50,000. Now I already have the highest offer. So it seems like when you say highest competing offer, it sounds like that my offer would then have to be $2,050,000 versus saying something to the fact that if any other offer is the same price or greater, then my offer would be $50,000 higher. It seems like if you're doing highest competing offer, my higher is already the highest offer to start with. Are you saying my offer has to be even that much higher?
No, so I think that based on the language that was on the screen, I tend to think that if you say highest competing offer, but you are the highest offer, then there is no higher competing offer. And so you're just left at your purchase price. But of course, that's a really excellent point for the listing agents because it's very difficult to understand a whole bunch of the escalation clauses that you receive. And the best idea is just counter it out. don't have anything to do with that, as well as, of course, why it always has a documentation part. Hey, you need to show us a copy of that. And then, of course, there might be additional controversy and disputes regarding, well, this one didn't have this one required, the seller to pay for the title, but we decided we were going to, pay. So does it really compete? Blah, 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 blah. So listing agents should not go down that road and just counter your offer for whatever your highest maximum is if you have one. So even if there is no highest competing offer, the listing agent should just counter you for your highest price because you've already revealed what it is. But the way that, just to answer your question, my tendency is to believe is that no, there would be no escalation in your situation if you are the highest offer.
But it is ambiguous when you say highest competing offer or the
Yeah,
next.
you're
highest
right.
competing
It
offer.
was, I was just using it as an illustration. Absolutely, it is very ambiguous. A true, well-written escalation clause is probably a whole page. And as you notice, CAR has not put out any boilerplate escalation clauses because actually, I think a lot of sellers and listing agents don't necessarily like it. And CAR is probably fearful that if you put in a maximum price, buyers are going to be upset and say, why did you reveal my maximum price? I didn't understand how it all works. So I tend to agree it is a little bit ambiguous.
Question.
Yes,
Bob?
Doug.
Wait a minute, Doug, hold on.
sorry.
Matthew Taylor, I believe, was first. Matthew?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I've seen on some of those offers where they write, like you say, it's $1 million and they write an offer for 1.2, but they put in there that the buyer will pay $50,000 over the appraised value, and then it gets accepted, and then it only appraises at $1,050,000. So the buyer feels, hey, I'm buying the property for $1,050,000, not the 1.2 that I offered. And some people say the seller's in a jam and has to sell it at that price. It goes to court or whatever. But you have to be careful when you accept those to really see what the language defines as.
Perfectly stated.
All right, Mr. Van Pelt, you had a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Bob. And
Mhm.
thank you, Stella, for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you around. I do have a question. In the early part of your presentation, and I wrote this down, buyer does not intend to submit requests for repairs. Does that contractually preclude your client from asking for repairs?
No, I don't think so. So, the buyer, based on what they see at the property, they don't intend to, but of course there could be some foundation problems or roof problems. So no, I don't think it's necessarily binding. And in any situation, buyers can always ask. There's nothing that in the contract, I know sellers don't like what I'm about to say, but in the contract, there's nothing that prohibits a buyer from asking something or the seller side from asking something. So we got your, $1 million price. We're, a day before close of escrow, and the buyer says, hey, will you sell it to me, seller, for 800,000? The seller wants to shoot the buyer. Yeah, you're in breach of contract. How dare you? No, there's nothing that prohibits the buyer from asking. Why? Because the entire contract, paragraph 31, I believe, of the RPA specifically states that any revision to this contract is not part of the contract unless it's signed by both parties. So there's no problem with asking. You can always ask, hey, sorry, we do have a request for repair anyway. But I don't know, it's just my little way, Doug, of, trying to figure out a way of, keeping this, you're writing the offer partly to protect your buyer, but partly to entice the other side. So it was just an idea of mine to try to entice the other side. That's all.
I love it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. We had a question in the chat, but we're running a little past time. So Stella, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. It was very, very helpful for us. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see y'all.
Mr. Freed, would you empower us with the statistics, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Let me see. Am I set up to be, let me share my screen here. Let me find this, get going here. Hold on.
There we go.
Listen, good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity of sharing with you the stats for the first half of 2021. I want to, first of all, and I think we all need to thank Ani. Every month, Ani puts these together for us. I'm doing the quarterly or for the half year, but she does all the work. I'm just doing the presentation, made a few modifications. I've also streamlined this. While we get the monthly one, I'm trying to make this into the quarter, but I also want to bring you some things up to date. So this morning, we are going to look at June 2020 versus June 2020, and then we'll look at the 6 months for both years. Please keep in mind a couple of things, in case you didn't know. This is a crazy market. None of us have seen anything like this before. Whether you've been in this business 20, 30, some of us have been in this business for over 40 years. We've never ever seen this. Since the Great Depression, just so you know, there has been 13 recessions, real estate cycles, since the Great Depression. Since I've been in real estate, we've gone through 5 or 6, and again, each one's a little bit different. Also remember, as we go through the stats, that probably in the middle of March of 2020, we weren't sure what was going to happen in real estate. And for the next 3 months, we saw about 30% of all the escrows drop. And we weren't really concerned with because of the coronavirus. So keep these things in mind. I will say what a difference a year has made. Let's get to it. We're going to look at, let's look at June 1st through June 30th of this year. And that's for all of our areas. A couple of things I want to point out here. If you look at sold, I have certain things in red. Sold, we had 127 properties that closed escrow in June. I want you to kind of notice the average days on the market, average, the medium, but look at your sales price to list price and your sales price to original list price. We have never seen this happen. Something else which is really important I want to point out. If you look at your days on the market, DOM, 18 days on the market, cumulative days on the market, 24. I just looked up June 30th, 2020. As the end of June, when we did our presentation, days on the market, 58 days on the market. Cumulative, 75 days on the market. Our market has changed. At the very bottom there, on the bottom left where it says current, 126, that's currently, as of June 30th, we had 126 properties on the market. Homes, PUDs. Over to the right there, again in red, 285. On June 30th of 2020, we had 285 properties on the market. Anybody ever heard of the word of supply and demand? This is what we're getting. But between supply and demand and days on the market, you can see how our market has changed. Let's look at this year versus last year for June. You can see in June of last year, we had 108 homes sell and PUDs. This year, 127. Look at your median sold price and your average sold price. Big jump. And again, even last year was great. 5% off a market, 95%. Again, for all of June, we were up basically almost 4% over our list price. So let's look at number of sales, median price. We'll look at homes in the state. And again, we're going from CARP all the way through Goleta. Quite a few sales. And if you kind of notice, even 217, 218, 219, we were pretty, we were very consistent. It's been a consistent market. Again, your 452 for 2020 really takes into account what happened in March, actually April, May, and June. But look what we've done. We've done nearly 200 more sales since 2 years ago. And look at almost 300 more sales just since last year. And this is now we're looking, as we look, we're looking year to date, January through June. Look at our medium sales price. Again, look how consistent from 217 to 220 we were. Look where we're at today. Last year, 1,288,500, or even before that, 1,290,000. Pretty standard. Nearly $2 million is our medium sales price. And that is taking into account both Montecito and Hope Ranch. And just so you know, at the very end of my presentation, I will have a screen on just Montecito and Hope Ranch for you. And later on during the day, if any of you want me to email you my presentation, which is a little bit shorter version, just email me, I'll be happy to do it. Pending sales. I mean, look at 230 more pending sales for the first 6 months versus last year. And again, if you we have normally been a consistent market from 2017 through 2019. And you can see a little bit of our dip. Active listings. This is where we're down a little bit on active listings, and the reason is they're going so fast. And I'm going to tell you, when people sit there and say, God, there's nothing on the market for sale, we've had nearly 10%, you'll see this in a moment, we've had nearly 10% more properties come on the market in 2021 than in 2020. The biggest difference is, again, days on the market. From 58 days, we're down to 18. But again, active listings, 884. Medium list price, $1,925,000. How do you explain this market? It's really easy. Easy to explain this market. We have no idea. It's crazy. So let's look at last year and compare to this year, just one-on-one. As you can see, active listings have been up nearly 10%. New listings up 8.5%. So more properties coming on the market. We're just selling them faster. More multiple offers taking place. Medium list price, look at that. We've gone up in 1 year, basically 44% from a list price of $1,337,000 to $1,925,000. Properties went to escrow, 45% more properties went to escrow this year than last year. Let's look at sold. Looking at the first 6 months of 2020 versus the first 6 months of 2021. Sold property. 65% more properties have sold. And again, what are we seeing? We talk about this. Right now, Mark Schneep used to always mention to us that about 75% of our buyers are already here in Santa Barbara. Whether they're going from a condo to a house to a house to a condo, whether they're going from Santa Barbara to Goleta or Goleta to the car, we've seen about 75%. Over the past year and a half to 2 years, we're now seeing more than 50% of our buyers coming from out of the area. Whether it's Los Angeles, San Francisco, out of state. And that's creating the intensity of our sales to a great extent. Medium list price up 55% since last year, comparing it. If we remove Montecito and Hope Ranch, it's still gone up 37%. Average sold. Our average sold price, 66% basically, from $1,900,000 last year to over $3 million. Average sold price without Hope Ranch and Montecito, still a pretty good, healthy 42%. But look at the spread between what prices were last year and where we are. And look at our sales volume, up 173%. We went from $862 million to over $2.35 billion in sales volume. Pretty healthy market. We have not plateaued yet. But before the market does change, we are going to see a plateau, as Stella kind of mentioned. we're going to hit an area. But until we get more supply, and between 126 now and 285 a year ago, it's going to take a lot of supply to change our demand. Condos are really interesting too. Again, condos, we sold 45 condos in the month of June. Again, look at the sales price, list price, over asking. We've never had this happen. And look at your days on the market, 16 days versus 23 days. A year ago, 60 days on market on condos, 80 days or longer for cumulative days on market. Again, we're seeing the properties coming on. Now, if you look down below at the very bottom, current active, right now, we have 24 condos on the market. A year ago, 102 condos on the market. So comparing June of 21 versus June of 20, you can see we had 45 sell in June, where last year it was 33. Medium sold price, 825,000 this year, medium 620, up $200,000. Average sold price, $1,045,000 to 853 just from a year ago. And the market was healthy, 95% sales price, list price last year. Again, over about 1% over what we're seeing. Number of sales, let's look at condo statistics now. You can see a big jump of what we've seen. Again, everything is consistent from 2017 through 2019. We saw obviously the second quarter of last year was a big drop, but still 260 condos have sold so far this year. Medium, look at the jump in the medium. We've consistently have been going up over the years, but a big jump of over $100,000 for our medium sales price so far for the first 6 months of 2021. Pending listings, also up. Every category as we're going through, you'll see how we've increased. Active listings, that has 310 versus 283. That's pretty consistent. You can kind of see what's happening over the past few years. I think 218 I think those may have been the hideaways, if I recall, when those came on the market, something like that. We had a lot of, or that actually may be a Christmas tree or farm where we had a lot of condos. But still, more active listings now. Median list price, big jump. We've gone up basically $77,000 on our medium list price from a year ago. So last year versus this year, active listings, we were up almost 10% on active listings. New listings, again, nearly 10%. So we're seeing the inventory. Inventory is here. We're just going much quicker. Median list price up 11%. Big difference when you look at condos versus single family homes with the appreciation, but still quite healthy with condos. And then our properties that went into escrow, we were up 58% more. Sold. Look at that. Nearly 80% more properties sold this year, in the first 6 months, than last year. Median sold price up 17%. Median sold price without Montecito, still 15%. Big appreciation. Great time for sellers, tough for buyers, as we all know. Average sold price up 12.5%. Look at that. Average sold price for a condo over $1 million here. Average sold price without Montecito still up 16%. And look at our sales volume. Up over 100%. But go ahead, let's look at Montecito. What's happened in Montecito for the first 6 months versus the first 6 months of 2020? Sold properties. Look at that. We're up basically almost 100% between last year and this year, Montecito. Our median sales price up nearly 50% from 3.25 medium sales price to 4,850,000. Average sales price, look at that, up 68%. Medium list price up 44%. Montecito is just cooking if you're a seller. And your average price up to that 57%. Look at those numbers for Montecito, especially the number of sales of what we've seen. Hope Ranch, sold properties in Hope Ranch, 12 last year, 37 this year already. Medium sales price, we're up 43% on the medium sales price from 3,300,000 to 4,750,000. Right now, the lowest price home in Montecito is priced at $4,595,000. Average sales price is up 45%. Medium list price up 35%. I mean, just look at the numbers from a year ago. And if you look at your average sales price, that is also up. I think you have to take into account a number of factors of what's going on in our market. First of all, as we mentioned, close to 50% of our buyers seem to be coming from outside the area. We're becoming a home-based society. People can work anywhere. And if they have to go someplace, like, I'll just quickly, Kelly and I sold a property where our clients from LA has to be in the studio once a month. He could live anywhere. Why live in LA when you can live in Santa Barbara or the San Ynez Valley? So we've seen a market that's extremely hot. You know, we talked about two types of market. It's either a buyer's market or a seller's market. It's simple. But what we have right now is what I'll call a seller's auction market. And what we look at is the fact that in our market, our fair market value is opening bid. Anyways, I want to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity of giving you the statistics. This is again a quarterly and it's a shorter version. Any questions, please feel free to email me. If you want a copy of my presentation, which includes Montecito and Hope Ranch, I can get it to you probably later this afternoon or this evening. Thank you all very much. Hope you guys have a good day and enjoy. And again, Stella, thank you for your time.